What's up guys and welcome back to Wall Street Millennial. Over the past year, space stocks have become one of the hottest sectors, with suborbital space tourism company Virgin Galactic being one of the top performing stocks and Cathie Wood announcing a new space ETF. But unfortunately for public market investors, Elon Musk's SpaceX and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origins have remained private to everyday investors who don't have an opportunity to participate, but this may soon change. Before we get into the video, make sure you smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It has recently been reported that Elon Musk is considering an IPO for SpaceX's Starlink unit once cash flows stabilize. Here's the news breaking on CNBC on February 9th.
Elon Musk again making headlines this morning, this time with SpaceX, saying its broadband satellite business will go public eventually. Musk tweeting, quote, "Once we can predict cash flow reasonably well, Starlink will IPO." But warning that the business will need to pass through a, quote, deep chasm of negative cash flow over the next year or so to actually make that financially viable. The possibility of SpaceX spinning off Starlink was first floated early last year by COO Gwen Shotwell, but Musk did shoot that down last March.
Shotwell in Bloomberg was quoted as saying that you were exploring splitting Starlink from SpaceX. Could you talk a little bit about that? Why that would happen, and how you see both of these independent companies functioning, and just talk a little bit about that.
We're thinking about that zero.
We're thinking about that what?
Zero.
Zero?
Zero.
Not thinking about it at all.
We need to make the thing work.
So clearly they're thinking about it. SpaceX has now well over 1,000 of its small satellites in orbit, has been deploying them rapidly. We saw a launch last week, another scheduled for later this week. Beta service began rolling out last fall. It's quickly expanding to different geographies, both across North America and other parts of the world, like the UK. SpaceX disclosing in an FCC filing just recently that it already has 10,000 users. The company has said that building this constellation of tens of thousands of internet satellites could cost upwards of $10 billion, but that ultimately Starlink could be a $30 billion a year business, or to put that in context, about 10 times the size of launch services, so the rockets that actually launch these satellites. Still, huge risks, because as Musk has pointed out multiple times now, including last night in Twitter, every other company that has done this or attempted to do this has gone bankrupt, and that goes back to the 90s. Nonetheless,
if this does happen, it could be a game changer for how you invest your money. Currently, the only space pure play is Virgin Galactic, which only does suborbital spaceflight for tourism. SpaceX's technology is even more advanced, with reusable rockets and ambitions to launch humans to Mars by the end of the decade. So is Starlink's IPO a one-way ticket for investors to go to the moon or even Mars? It's a little bit more complicated than that. SpaceX can be segmented into two main businesses. The first is the rocket launching business, where they launch payloads mainly for government clients like NASA and the military. They can conduct a wide range of missions, including sending payloads to the International Space Station. With their reusable rocket technology, they significantly reduce the cost of rocket launches. In the past, rockets were single-use. This was an incredibly wasteful process, because for every launch, a piece of hardware costing hundreds of millions of dollars was destroyed. SpaceX has developed reusable rockets, which cut the cost of a rocket launch to a fraction of what it previously was. This rocket launching segment is part of the business that will eventually go to Mars and set up a colony, turning humanity into an interstellar species. Unfortunately, this segment is unlikely to IPO anytime soon. The other part of the business is Starlink. SpaceX is leveraging its reusable rocket technology to launch thousands of small satellites into orbit, which will provide high-speed internet connection globally. This effort is already well underway, and they recently launched their 1,000th rocket earlier this year. While providing internet service isn't as exciting and revolutionary as starting a new Mars colony, it's still incredibly promising as a business and has much more commercial viability in the short to medium term. As the digital economy continues to grow, accelerated by work-from-home trends during the pandemic, reliable and affordable internet connection is more important than ever. Unfortunately, many rural communities still lack reliable internet service because traditional broadband providers don't want to spend the billions of dollars in investment required to run cables out to these communities. According to the FCC, 1 in 4 Americans living in rural communities lack internet service, and this number is even worse in tribal areas. Furthermore, even when internet service is available, it is often too expensive, and approximately 100 million Americans do not subscribe to internet plans because of excessive cost. And this problem is even worse in developing countries that have far less broadband infrastructure than the US. This represents a huge opportunity for Starlink, as they can use their satellites to provide affordable internet service to hundreds of millions of customers in rural and remote areas. So how does Starlink work? Starlink is making 120 satellites per month and aims to have 12,000 satellites in orbit eventually, which will beam down satellite internet all over the world. They promise very fast service, up to 10 gigabits per second, which is phenomenal for satellite internet. According to Verizon, things like streaming, web surfing, and video conferencing only need up to 25 megabits per second to work well, which is approximately 250 times slower than 10 gigabits per second metric Starlink is aiming for. Early testing has shown that Starlink has a latency around 34 milliseconds. That's about twice the latency of fiber at 17 milliseconds, but that's understandable because the communication network has to travel so far from Earth to the satellites and back down to Earth. And it's still pretty good by any standard. Any latency under 40 milliseconds is pretty good. Starlink is already operational in beta. In what Elon Musk calls the Better Than Nothing beta project, a small amount of customers are already getting surprisingly good performance. It costs $99 a month and is only available to a handful of people in specific regions, presumably so that SpaceX can test its operation in remote locations. But one customer in rural Montana reported getting 161 megabits per second download and 23 megabits per second upload speeds. That's fast enough to stream in 4K with zero buffering, and better than most broadband internet providers in the US. Because it is uninhibited by traditional ground-based internet infrastructure, this service is ideal for delivering internet to rural and remote locations around the globe. Furthermore, Starlink actually has a real chance of working on a large scale from a business perspective, since a lot of major challenges associated with setting up a satellite internet constellation have already been solved by SpaceX, an advantage that other companies have not had and thus failed. In the most recent launch, SpaceX launched 60 Starlink satellites into space from Cape Canaveral in Florida. Here's a hype video from the launch.
LWO1 WeatherNet, liftoff conditions looking pretty good.
STS is ready for launch. Ignition. Liftoff.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Ten, 9, 8,
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Given SpaceX's superior technology and track record for being able to do things other space entities just can't, it looks like Starlink has a very good chance of being successful. But Elon Musk isn't the only tech billionaire with ambitions to launch an internet satellite network. In July, Amazon received FCC approval for its own planned satellite network called Project Kuiper. They plan to invest more than $10 billion to launch more than 3,000 satellites, which will compete with Starlink to provide internet access. Amazon has started focusing on space over the past few years with the launch of its Aerospace and Satellite Solutions division within Amazon Web Services. The satellite internet opportunity is massive, with Morgan Stanley estimating $100 billion of potential revenue for Amazon once the project is up and running. They also expect the total space industry to surpass $1 trillion over the next 20 years. But Amazon has not yet released a timeline for when they will start launching their satellites, so it could be many years before their system is operational. This puts Starlink at a significant advantage with over 1,000 satellites already in orbit. The Starlink IPO will provide investors with an opportunity to participate in one of Elon Musk's most ambitious and innovative ventures. While it is still in its early stages and it's unclear how the economics of the project will pay for the billions of dollars of initial investment required, investors have historically done quite well when they bet on Elon Musk. What do you guys think? Is the Starlink IPO a one-way ticket to the moon? Or is it still too early to tell? Let us know in the comments section below. If you like this content, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Also, follow us on TikTok and Instagram. That wraps up for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.